The late afternoon sun spilled golden light through the wide windows of the city's most luxurious train station. Polished marble floors gleamed, designer shoes clicked, and the air buzzed with the chatter of businessmen and the rustle of expensive handbags. For many, this was a place of transit. For others, like Sophia Khan, it was yet another stage to display status. Sophia, a woman in her early 40s, was elegance personified. Dressed in a tailored silk suit, adorned with diamond earrings that sparkled even in the dim light, she moved with the air of someone used to being noticed. Her driver carried her designer luggage behind her as she approached the train that would take her to the neighboring city for a business gala. She disliked trains, truth be told. Why would she, a woman of wealth and power, rub shoulders with common travelers? But today her private car was under maintenance, and the short train ride seemed tolerable, so long as she was seated in the first-class carriage. With her ticket in hand, she boarded gracefully, eyes scanning the leather seats. Then her gaze froze. There, slouched against the window, sat an old man. His clothes were faded, the kind of fabric that had seen too many summers. His shoes were worn, his hair uncombed, and in his hands he clutched a small cloth bag. His face, wrinkled and weary, suggested years of hard labor, yet his posture carried a quiet dignity. Sophia's nose wrinkled in disgust. First class? How did someone like him manage to get here? Excuse me, she said sharply, pointing at the seat next to him, the one her ticket indicated. This is my seat. The old man lifted his eyes slowly. They were a soft brown, tired but gentle. He gave a faint nod and shifted slightly, making room for her. But Sophia did not sit down. She clutched her handbag tighter, glancing around the cabin as though someone might intervene. There must be a mistake, she muttered loudly. I can't possibly sit beside him. Other passengers turned their heads, their eyes flickering with curiosity. The conductor, overhearing the commotion, stepped forward. Is everything all right, madam? Sophia lifted her chin. There's clearly been an error. My seat is next to this, man. I paid for first class. I expect to be seated with people of my own standard. The conductor checked her ticket and confirmed softly, this is your seat, madam. And this gentleman has his ticket as well. He belongs here as much as you do. Her lips pursed tightly. She looked down at the old man, who now sat silently, his gaze lowered, as though used to such treatment. Sophia sighed dramatically. Fine. I'll stand until another seat opens up. She turned, heels clicking, and walked away, leaving the old man staring out the window as the train began to move. But what Sophia didn't know, what none of the passengers suspected, was that the poor old man carried a story that would shake the arrogance from her heart and reveal a truth she could never have imagined. The train rattled along the tracks, carrying its passengers through fields that shimmered with the last glow of the evening sun. Inside the first-class cabin, a hush lingered. Most travelers were immersed in books, laptops, or quiet conversation. But Sophia stood stiffly near the aisle, her arms crossed, glaring every so often at the old man by the window. The conductor approached again. Madam, please, standing in the aisle is not safe. You must take your seat. Sophia's lips tightened. I told you, I can't sit there. Her voice was sharp enough to draw attention from nearby passengers. A young woman across the aisle frowned and whispered to her husband, why does it matter? He's just sitting there, minding his business. Sophia caught the words and bristled. I won't explain myself to strangers, she snapped, before turning away. The old man, still by the window, finally spoke. His voice was calm, steady, and low, yet it carried in the silence of the cabin. Madam, you need not trouble yourself on my account. If my presence offends you, perhaps I should move. He began to rise, clutching his cloth bag. But the conductor stopped him gently. Sir, your seat is yours. Please, don't move. She must sit. Sophia sighed heavily and, with visible reluctance, lowered herself into the leather seat beside him. She shifted her body as far as possible toward the aisle, clutching her handbag like a shield. Minutes passed in tense silence. The train swayed gently, and Sophia busied herself scrolling through her gold-plated phone. She wrinkled her nose as if the old man's presence polluted the air. But then a small sound caught her attention, a faint cough. The old man placed a hand to his chest, his breath shallow for a moment. Sophia glanced sideways, irritation in her eyes, but she noticed something. His hands were rough, scarred, the kind of hands that had known decades of work. And though his clothes were plain, his posture carried a quiet strength. Still, she brushed the thought aside. If people like him can afford first class these days, she muttered under her breath, no wonder the world feels upside down. The old man turned his head slightly. His eyes met hers, not with anger but with a depth that startled her. They were kind, but there was something else, a shadow of stories untold. Madam, he said softly, you judge me by what you see. But sometimes what we see tells us very little. Sophia's eyes narrowed. And what would you know about me? Do you even understand the kind of people who travel here? He smiled faintly. I may know more than you think. Her cheeks flushed at his calmness. She turned away, embarrassed yet strangely unsettled. The train roared through a tunnel, the lights flickering briefly. When they emerged into daylight again, Sophia noticed that several passengers were watching her, their expressions ranging from disapproval to pity. Her pride stiffened. I don't have to listen to this, she whispered to herself, tightening her grip on her handbag. But somewhere deep inside, a seed of unease had been planted. Who was this man, really? Why did his quiet words feel like they carried weight heavier than her jewels? And why, despite herself, did she feel as though she had just stepped into a story much bigger than her own? The train rolled steadily into the night, its rhythmic clatter echoing in the cabin. Most passengers had settled into the soft hum of travel. But between Sophia and the old man, silence pressed like an invisible wall. Sophia fidgeted. She scrolled endlessly on her phone, glanced out the window, adjusted her diamond bracelet, anything to avoid looking at him. But the old man sat with a stillness that unsettled her. He gazed at the passing fields as though he could see far beyond them, his eyes lost in memories. Suddenly, the train jolted over a rough patch of track. Sophia's designer purse slipped from her lap, spilling across the floor. Lipstick, perfume, credit cards, and cash scattered everywhere. She gasped. Oh no! She bent down hurriedly, trying to gather her belongings before anyone noticed. But before she could reach them all, the old man leaned down too. His hands, though worn and rough, moved carefully, respectfully. He picked up her wallet and extended it to her. Sophia snatched it quickly. I can handle it, she said sharply. But her voice trembled, not out of anger, but from something unfamiliar, shame. The old man simply nodded and placed the last fallen coin from her purse into her palm. Even the smallest things have value, he murmured. Don't overlook them. Sophia frowned. What is that supposed to mean? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned back to the window. But his words lingered in her mind, echoing uncomfortably. Moments later, the conductor passed through the cabin again. This time, he stopped by the old man. Sir, I couldn't help but notice your ticket, the conductor said in a lowered voice. This seat, it's usually reserved for long-time patrons. But your name, he hesitated. Are you, the same Mr. Raymond Ellis? The old man smiled faintly. I used to be, yes. The conductor's eyes widened. Sir, I didn't realize, forgive me. It's an honor. He adjusted his cap respectfully and moved along. Sophia blinked. Mr. Raymond Ellis? The name stirred something in her memory. She had heard it before, in business magazines her father used to read, in conversations among wealthy investors. Wasn't he? Her curiosity pricked, but her pride wrestled it down. She refused to ask. Yet the unease in her chest grew heavier. The train slowed as it approached the next station. Outside, a cluster of children waved excitedly at the passing cars. The old man's face softened, his eyes lighting up with quiet joy as he raised a hand and waved back. The children cheered as though they recognized him. Sophia turned her face away, annoyed at how easily he smiled at strangers, how effortlessly he carried himself with dignity, even in plain clothes. But deep down, a question gnawed at her. Who exactly is this man I was so quick to dismiss? Little did she know, the truth about Raymond Ellis was far greater, and far closer to her world, than she ever imagined. The train swayed gently as darkness deepened outside, the countryside now just a blur of shadows. Inside the cabin, most passengers had settled into sleep or quiet reflection. Sophia, however, was restless. Her mind kept circling back to the conductor's words. Raymond Ellis. The name echoed in her head like a bell she couldn't unhear. She remembered her father speaking of him years ago, a brilliant businessman, a philanthropist, a man who had risen from nothing to build an empire. But she also recalled hearing whispers of tragedy, of a man who had mysteriously disappeared from the public eye. Could this frail old man sitting beside her truly be that Raymond Ellis? Sophia finally turned to him. Tell me something, she said, her tone sharper than she intended. Are you really Raymond Ellis? The Raymond Ellis who used to own Ellis Enterprises? The old man smiled faintly, as if amused by her skepticism. Yes, he said quietly. Though the title of owner doesn't mean as much as people think. Sophia's jaw tightened. Then what happened to you? Why are you here, dressed like that, traveling like this? There was no insult in his eyes, no defensiveness. Only patience. He leaned back, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Because titles fade. Money disappears. What remains is what you've given to the world, and what you've taken for granted. Sophia frowned, uncomfortable with his calm certainty. She shifted in her seat. That sounds like something a man says after losing everything. He chuckled softly. Or perhaps it's something a man learns after gaining too much. For the first time, Sophia had no retort. Moments later, a young boy entered the cabin with his mother. The boy, no older than 10, spotted the old man and gasped. "Grandpa Ellis." He ran forward, hugging him tightly. The mother hurried behind, apologizing. "I'm so sorry, sir, he just recognized you from the community center. You helped build the library there." The old man's eyes softened as he patted the boy's head. "No need to apologize. It's good to see a young mind eager to learn." Sophia watched, stunned. This poor, old man wasn't just someone who had fallen from wealth, he was someone still remembered with respect and love by ordinary people. When the mother and boy left, Sophia finally asked, her voice quieter this time, why do you live like this? If you were who they say you were, you could be sitting in luxury right now. You could still have everything." Raymond Ellis looked at her, his gaze steady, piercing. "Because true wealth, my dear, isn't measured in leather seats or jewels on a wrist. It's measured in the lives you touch, the people who remember you with gratitude, not envy." Sophia froze. For the first time in years, she felt her carefully built pride begin to crack. His words cut through the armor she had worn all her life. And deep down, though she didn't want to admit it, she began to realize, sitting beside this man was not a disgrace. It was a privilege. Sophia sat in silence, her heart pounding. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels filled the space between them, but inside her chest, it was as if a storm had begun. She tried to compose herself, but the old man's words lingered, echoing louder than the sounds outside. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "My father once told me about Raymond Ellis. He said you built entire communities, schools, hospitals, even shelters. He admired you." The old man tilted his head, his eyes soft but knowing. "And what did you admire?" Sophia hesitated. She thought of her sprawling mansion, her designer clothes, her endless collection of jewels. Things she guarded so fiercely. "Success," she admitted flatly. "I admired success." Raymond smiled gently, almost sadly. "Then perhaps you misunderstood success." Before Sophia could respond, the young boy from earlier returned with a small drawing in his hand. It was a crude sketch of the library he'd mentioned, 2 stick figures standing in front of it. One was labeled Grandpa Ellis, and the other, me. The boy grinned, handing it proudly to Raymond. "I made this for you. Thank you for the books." Raymond accepted it with tears glistening in his eyes. He patted the boy's shoulder. "You've given me more than you know, child." The boy left again, leaving Sophia speechless. Raymond turned back to her. His tone shifted, heavier now. "You said your father admired me. What was his name?" Sophia straightened. "Richard Beaumont." For the first time, Raymond's expression faltered. His lips parted, his eyes glimmered with something deeper, memory, grief. He leaned forward, whispering the name as though it was a ghost from his past. "Richard, my old friend." Sophia's eyes widened. "You knew my father?" Raymond nodded slowly. "He was more than a friend. He was my partner in building those first schools, before he became consumed by wealth. We shared dreams, hopes for a better world." He paused, his gaze heavy with sorrow. "But somewhere along the way, Richard lost himself to ambition. And, it seems you inherited that part of him." Sophia's throat tightened. Her hands, which had once rested confidently on her expensive handbag, now fidgeted nervously. "You mean, my father and you?" "Yes," Raymond said firmly. "We were brothers in vision. But he chose the path of greed, while I chose to give away what I built. That is why we ended up on different sides of life's table." Sophia's face burned with shame. Her father had spoken of Raymond Ellis, yes, but always in passing, always with a faint bitterness. Now she understood why. She looked at the old man, no longer with disdain, but with an ache she couldn't name. For the first time, Sophia saw her reflection in him, not the clothes, not the wealth, but the choices. And she feared what her own reflection revealed.